Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Doppler's Gear Garage. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are on this planet. Thanks so much for tuning in and sharing your Saturday with me. Griffin Gaines, hello. Good morning, good morning. Matt King, thank you so much. Good vibes to you. Melissa Doppler, hey. Enjoying coffee there. Eric Vaughn, hello. Always a pleasure. Mark Dalecki, how you doing? Thanks for sending those questions through. Peter Daviduck, what's going on, my man? Great to see you. Hello, hello, hello. Boom. Well, have we got a show for you? Jim, what's happening, my man? Happy Gibbs Saturday. Holy cow. It's been quite a week, a great week. And so, so much to kind of, if you will, vibe off of. But what I wanted to do there, M, what's going on, my man? You know, the first thing that I'm super excited to talk about is that I'm headed back into the studio in October on the 11th and 12th, and I'm going to be adding what is intended to be 3 more songs to the instrumental album, as well as 3 songs to the vocal album. And so that right there that you were hearing. Is a song called Linger that kind of has been written this week. So we kind of played the baked potato on Monday, and the people at the venue were unreal. I mean, you know, I don't quite know how to explain it, other than to say, you know, when you go to a place like Los Angeles or New York and you play, you know, especially from somebody that's not from there, you always kind of, in some ways, come in as an outsider. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just kind of the natural way things are. But the people at the baked potato were so unbelievably warm, receptive, and the people at the venue, Justin, who owns the venue, who, by the way, his dad's name is Don Randy, and, you know, the week before going down there, I was watching this documentary on Pet Sounds, the Beach Boys / really Brian Wilson album, and all of a sudden I'm like, Don Randy, and like I knew that Justin, the Randy who owns the venue, his dad was a player, but I hadn't made the connection to the fact that he was actually part of the Wrecking Crew. And there he is, you know, the da 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 da, you know, playing these you know, famous iconic lines from you know, Beach Boys stuff, and I'm like, wow, you know. So just kind of like, so as I kind of, you know, walked into the venue, Rick, what's going on? Good morning to you. You know, I kind of turn around. Literally right behind where I'm standing, there's like these 5 stills of Steve Lukather. I'm kind of going. I have to say, if there's ever any moment, Paul Richard, good morning, my friend, that you kind of go, I think I know what I'm doing here, but, you know, you kind of go, wow, what have I got to say that hasn't been said on this stage better by more talented people? I think everybody kind of, it would be a natural reaction for just about anybody. It's not the sort of venue where it's going to do you any good to go and like, I'm going to show them how this is done. It's just that will not serve you well. And it was just such an amazing night, and just everything about it was magical. Band was great. Kyle Brian Abbott. Kyle Brian is his name on Instagram, and Kyle Brian Abbott on Facebook. But it was our first gig with him on drums, and he was phenomenal. And, you know, just did such a great job. And Angeline Saris on bass. But it was just such a great experience. And then yesterday, dropped this video interviewing Justin Crew, Kirk Hammett's tech for 25 plus years. And that video is, in the next hour, will probably have 2,000 views, which for me is a huge success. One, you know, it's not about the numbers. But at the same time, you know, having people actually watching something that you've spent so much time and energy doing is a big deal. And it's a great interview, not because of me, but because of the things that Justin shares about kind of the nuances of Metallica's gear over the years, Greenie, and just kind of, you know, some of the things they do about in-ears and just working with the Axe effects and how they kind of on-ramped it because they went to Antarctica, and how they kind of went, wow, this works so well, and it allows them to solve some of the challenges that in the real world, you know, amps and speakers present. And it was just really kind of, just to get a chance to kind of have a peek behind the curtain in a Metallica world, you know, was just inspirational and humbling simultaneously, So, and in the midst of this, on Monday, I get together with Caleb Johnson, the singer on the vocal album, who, in case you haven't heard me mumble on about, won American Idol. He is my favorite vocalist, basically, in the world. And if you haven't heard him, I encourage you, not now, but to go ahead and Google American Idol Dream On and just watch him absolutely slay that song. And, he's just somebody I would call a friend. But he's also somebody that we write really well together. So this new song here, I haven't played it for him yet. So, and because I feel very special about the people that I get a chance to kind of hang out with on Saturday. And kind of what's neat about it, the guitar melody that'll probably start the song. Is in many ways what I've been kind of working, try to kind of gather, where when I pick up the guitar, it actually feels like me instead of me trying to find me. And chord-wise, kind of one of my favorite things about this whole process that I don't talk about much yet, but is kind of finding yourself rhythmically, And the strings are a little bit closer together on this neck here, so that particular chord, if I don't apply a little bit of vibrato there, has a tendency to be a little bit out of tune. But especially... so the great thing about the Metallica video, I'm going to non sequitur here, and I do have some questions that came through. Thank you very much, Mike Bilecki and Chris Alexander. But, developing... Braden, what's going on, my man? Thank you so much for joining us. Dark roast and workshop time with the Doppler gang. Oh, that's awesome. Come on. That whole, rhythm guitar. Raz, what's going on, my man? Great to see you. Good morning. I love Vito Bratta. Not that sounds like Vito, but I actually played on guitar here where I played Radar Love, and there's all this crazy feedback on it, and I had to find some way of getting the exact feedback notes. So I used the Sustainiac and literally had to punch the whole thing together. It was really, it was a little bit of turd polishing, but sometimes that's what you have to do to make it happen. Sweetheart, have a great day. Rez, when I say sweetheart, I am actually referring to Melissa Doppler, but I love you too. Mark Turvey, what's going on, Maestro? An interesting thing about these particular Flying V's is that it's really, my main guitarist basically got 4 controls. So I was looking at it one day and I was like, if you look at this and you were to move this toggle switch Jimmy Jet, what's happening, my man? I was like, it really looks like the placement of a traditional Les Paul configuration. And at rehearsal on Monday, I decided to kind of make sure that I didn't break any strings. So, I'm when I can, I try and change strings, with a little bit of advance time before the actual show. And I try not to do it in the venue if at all possible, but that's not always the case. So in rehearsal, I had my other flying, the other Flying V, which is kind of like the main one with the Floyd, but without a Floyd, and we haven't changed out the pickups or the pickguard yet. So it's got the 3 controls, and I was like, how do these work again? So I finally have kind of figured this thing out. And this is largely, so for any of my Gibson brethren out there, or anybody who has kind of like, this type of setup, I learned this from Gilby Clark. You get your bridge pickup all the way up, and you blend in a little bit of neck. So here, first of all, is just the bridge pickup with the volume of the bridge pickup. And again, the configuration is kind of interesting how these controls are set up, because it's pretty non-intuitive until you kind of just remember what it does. And in some senses, bridge pickup, neck pickup, got it. Master tone. So if you think of your two controls for volume there, and kind of as they relate to the pickup, you can kind of go, okay, I see that. And then master tone, which ultimately I found actually works really well, so you're not kind of reaching down there for the tone control. But in the bridge position with the volume all the way up and the tone all the way up. And then what you can do is blend in. That should turn it all the way off. There we go. Blend in, I don't know, let's say 40% of the neck pickup. Versus a little bit brighter. Add just a little bit of body, and then take the tone control and back that off. Versus you need a little bit top end. So it really, especially if you're prone to playing with the fingers, I mean those fingers. Really kind of allows you to kind of open up the guitar. And so it was really kind of a happy accident that I sat in rehearsal with the other one, kind of went, I guess I kept reaching for the wrong control. It was really kind of, dare I say, embarrassing. But in the process, I was like, okay, I got this. And so I broke a string on kind of, if you will, number one. Affectionately, I have called that guitar officially Black Betty. So I kind of was like, well, let me pull out the old V. So this is, I think, an 83. I should be able to tell by looking at the serial number. Hang on a second. Where are you? Come on. You are an 83. And so, also because of that, the Justin Crew interview around Kirk's gear, I was like, you know what, let me pull that guitar out. So I think this is a year younger than Kirk's guitar, and these are DiMarzios. What I love about this should be the PAF Joe. The thing about this particular pickup, volume and tone all the way up. Let's go E. Hang on, let me mute the mic. Sorry, F. It's a great sounding neck pickup. It's very stratty. Ironically, here we are on a Gibson scale with a humbucker. That's why I've always loved this pickup. This should be kind of it's the strangest name. It's like the 27th anniversary PAF or something. And I think I kind of went into that a little bit before the stream. Like, really? You just wouldn't have necessarily thunk it. But if you think about where, great question. So the PAF Pro, Rez, was the pickup that preceded this, and the PAF Joe was a modification where they just made it a little bit more stratty. So it was before Joe went to kind of the narrow aperture humbucking pickup in the neck, and it's my favorite humbucking neck pickup. I just love it. But because the other kind of Black Betty's got the Sustainiac in the neck, I couldn't do this pickup there. But holy cow. You got to see the Arlington shows. I haven't caught Metallica on this tour yet. But yeah, no, the Greenie is just like, holy cow. I'm so glad you were able to see that. Frank, how are you, my man? I think about you basically every day. So I am journeying with you, just so you know. We'll leave it there. But thank you for jumping in. And nice to see that you're turning out lesson content, and you are an inspiration. We'll leave it there. Great to see you. Good morning, my man. Thank you. This guitar, it's funny. You kind of ultimately, I'm sure you know this. You kind of start to call an instrument home, and then kind of, it's kind of like getting married. Your eyes stop wandering, unless you're on reverb. Just saying. Melissa, I hope you're not listening. And so, hey, Kevin, what's going on? Good morning. Gonna DM you. Awesome. Please do. And by the way, anybody who ever DMs me, I'm not necessarily the fastest, but that doesn't mean I'm ignoring people. Sometimes I just don't get over there. Hold on a second. Jimmy Jet, that is the longest comment I've ever seen from you. So what's hilarious is I absolutely adore Jimmy Jet. He's just one of those guys that is sustaining the love of rock and roll on multiple formats. But his classic thing is blah, blah, blah. Uppercase, rocks, exclamation point. Love the Gibson Fine Tuner stop tailpiece. So he's obviously caffeinated this morning. The funny thing is that when I got this guitar, first of all, thank you. When I got this guitar, I took it to Gary Brower, and he was like, "Are you sure you want to keep that on there?" I'm like, "Yeah, And the funny thing is that I always tune from the tuners, which is really kind of absurd, simply because I'm so used to, I don't know, well, it's stupid. I'm so used to having the guitar with the Floyd where I always tune from the bridge, and this one I don't. I don't quite know what's wrong with me. I will share, hi, all, Melissa's like, yes, I'm listening to the comments about reverb. Look at the smile. She's like, ha, ha, ha. I am watching. So I am going to be slightly abstract in kind of the range of things we're talking about, but as I've threatened months ago that at some point sooner or later there's going to be some sort of format to what we're doing here. But I also love the grab bag nature of this. I want to take a moment and talk about changing strings, because this is a really, really big deal. First of all, I am a Dunlop artist, and so they make a custom set of strings for me that is basically a combination of their heavy core on the bottom there. So it is a 9 through 42, so that's 42, 32, and 24. But they're the heavy core, so they have a thicker core, which means they're not as inclined to move around and go sharp when you hit them, or hit them harder than maybe you should. Ideally, you want to hit the string hard enough that it rings, and not so much that it goes sharp, as that's happening. But one of the things that I do on this particular guitar, let's see if I can point this in the right direction, and it won't necessarily be there we go, in focus, but on the low E string, now you're not going to be able to see it, but these are that you can see. So these are locking tuners, which, by the way, I will be making, I'm getting ready to make a ton of video content, and the great thing about how incredibly well this interview with Justin Crew is going, my guess is by now it has, let's see if I can do this and turn the volume down, and it's going to go back up as soon as I do this, so I know that, but it should have probably gone over 2,000 views, which for me is a giant deal. And oh, it's not, the volume didn't automatically go up. Nope, we're at 1.8 thousand views, which for me is just a giant win, just the same, because it's been up about 15 hours or so. And I used to kind of do the YouTube thing a lot, so kind of getting back into it. For me, one of the big things I want to do on YouTube is provide resources for guitar players who want some additional resources to turn to. So as it relates to these guitars, or any of them that I don't have a locking nut on, one of the things that I actually like to do on the bass strings is I will actually, first of all, every guitar that I've got that I use regularly will have locking tuners. Giant deal. So it's just like, chances are the thumbnail will be something like, if you own a Gibson guitar, do this, or something, you know, kind of, every guitar should do this. Even on the guitars that I have with locking nuts, I still put the locking tuners on there. First of all, it makes for an insanely fast string change. But for instruments like this, what I will do is, first of all, they're basically non-slip other than the string stretching. But I will put extra winds down and wind the string with some extra winds, which normally you wouldn't normally do on a locking tuner. But I get extra winds winding down the peg, and what that does, it's the equivalent of lowering the tailpiece, the block, what's that back piece called? Bridge and tailpiece, bridge, tailpiece. As, you know, kind of the equivalent of lowering the tailpiece down. It increases the tension on the strings. So the same thing happens when you bring the bass strings further down on the peg with more winds. So that's kind of one of the things that I also do to kind of make it such that the string doesn't go as sharp when I hit it. Because again, by kind of pushing it down, if I did this, you can hear that's pulling it sharp. So that's increasing the tension. So by increasing the winds there, it's increasing the tension on the string in a slightly different way. But it's having, the end result is it's a little bit stiffer on the low E string. And conversely, I can tell the kind of tension I like to have, if you will, kind of a traditional 90 tension on the top. So that's something that is a big deal. Steve, I would love to come to Costa Rica, so count me in on that, most definitely. I'm there. Mark, I've never had a guitar with locking tuners. My guitars stay in tune just fine. What would I gain with these? Well, here's the thing. First of all, and I know you've changed enough guitar strings, you're like, oh, snap. And snap is usually not the first word that comes out of one's mouth when they poke themselves with the end of the string in the midst of a string change. So literally, you just kind of line the hole in the string up with, and the peg rather, up with the string. You literally push it through. You go bing, bing, bing on the back. That is me twisting the kind of the locking mechanism. And then you bring it up to pitch and then stretch your strings. I mean, it is the fastest string change ever. So it's a great question. So in terms of the other thing about that, if you're not winding it down, because that actually introduces some of the very problems that you're trying to get around, is the more winds you've got around the string, the more slippage you're going to get up there. And so, you know, another piece of one of the videos that I'm going to make is about, you know, how much should you stretch your strings? Because it is relevant to what you're going to be doing. If I'm doing a gig, I'm stretching the strings until they will stretch no more. Because I don't want to be on stage having the guitar going flat because the strings are continuing to stretch. So, and I kind of run my thumb and my thumb and forefingers is kind of how I tension the string as I go up and down the string. And you can feel the string begin to stretch, but I'm also very conscious of not putting any tension on the bridge as I'm doing that. I'll also, again, using my left hand right around the 12th fret, that's kind of how I'll try and gently tug and get any slippage potentially that's happening around the tuning peg there, get that to come out. And usually, once I've stretched them pretty well, they're pretty stable. But the difference is, if I'm going to be in, nope, that is flat, there you go, but I've been messing with it enough. This guitar is being set up for the studio, so I'm not going to stretch it quite as much because it's not quite as critical that it stay in tune for the period of hopefully, you know, an entire set. So the idea is and they do get less bright the more you stretch them. The Dunlop strings aren't super bright by nature. So they're not too much on the top end, especially when you start playing with enough gain, everything all the way up. So the strings are a huge part of the sound because if you think about it, it's where everything starts. Without going too much further down the rabbit trail on the string topic, the electromagnetic relationship between the strings and the pickups, not only the sound of the strings, but again, kind of, if you will, the materials used in making them, have a lot to do with how they interfere with that electromagnetic field that's happening there, which is, it's basically a microphone that relates to how this string is interacting with the magnetic field there. So the materials, not just sonically, but physically in terms of their, what I like to say is magnetic capacity, it has a lot to do with what's going to happen by the time it comes out of whatever you're playing through. It's interesting because there's not a lot of talk about it, but it's a big deal to me. All right. Y'all are very quiet, must be concentrating hard on this string change lesson. Thanks, love. So the other thing that I'm going to start doing here is from time to time, and let me be really clear, this is not humble brag. This is actually, and I think everybody's going to be good with this, I get a chance to share some of the gear that's coming through here. So one of the videos that hopefully I'm going to get a chance to make, as long as I'm not too enveloped in the songwriting process this week, is some of the crazy gear that I'm going to use for creating this new rig. So behind me, and you kind of wonder, well, what's with the green tape? I do not yet have a road case. That's the Mark 7, the most obscenely amazing amp on the planet. This guy here is called the Underliner. And the funny thing is, it's basically two additional volume controls, kind of, if you will. It's designed to be placed in the effects loop. There we go. And via MIDI, there we go. Via MIDI, I'm gonna gotta get my left and right. There we go. Can we get there? We go. There's our reflection there. Via MIDI, I'm gonna Cali Fortune. Hang on a second. No, it's just boiling string. No, it's just boiling my strings. Face red droopy eyes. It's 9 a.m. on a Saturday. Most guitarists are just going to bed, unless they're old farts. In which case, they went to bed at about 9 o'clock last night. I actually went to bed at 11. But okay. So in any case, so the neat thing about this is that this gives you two basically additional master volume controls. So for a solo boost, if you're sitting in with somebody, you can have your tone. But if you just want to have more volume, most amps aren't set up with something that is just kind of just louder. But the interesting thing was with this gig at the Baked Potato, something very exciting happened, which is Kyle, the drummer, actually can play pianissimo and actually does. And I was like, I needed this, and I just didn't have time to integrate this into the rig. But it will be built into the next rig, so I can tell you a little bit about what's going on. So back, let's see, on my left, and there we go. I'm finally getting this right. That's the Seymour Duncan Power Stage 700, and right below that is the Axe FX 3, and there is the Mark 7, and then right there is 1, 2 Boogie 412 cabinets, and those cabinets are stereo. So I got a chance to tell you about this rig. It's going to be flipping nuts. The Boogie has a number of features that lend itself to what it is that I'm going to be doing. Just cutting out plywood for a speaker cab, come on. Trying to keep the fingers, yes, Braden, please do keep the fingers out of the way of the saw, please. So the thing about this rig is I'm going to use 2 cabinets for a wet, dry, wet setup. So the Boogie cabinets are stereo. On the far left and far right vertical pairs of speakers, that's going to be where the delays, reverbs live. The center 2 vertical pairs of speakers are going to be where the direct signal is going to live. So I'm going to come out of the speaker routes on the Mark 7s to my left, nope, to my right. One of these days I'll figure this out. And I'll come out of those, and I will go into the middle two vertical pairs of speakers in those two cabinets back there. By the way, if I didn't finish why I've got the green tape on there, I don't have a road case for this thing yet. So I put the tape over it, although I kind of, let's imagine this is my iPhone. Well, technically this is my iPhone. But the point being is I don't have a road case yet for that to sit in, so we just kind of took the original box that it came in. So I'm always like, wherever I last had set the knobs, even if they got moved by accident, like, oh, that's the perfect tone, can't touch that, right? So I'm always like, let me shoot that again. But so that I put the tape on there just to kind of keep things in place. It works actually quite well. So the point being is this guy will sit in the loop of the boogie. Generally, my favorite thing to do these days is come out of the boogie, and what I did for the Los Angeles gig was I came out of the boogie using the line out, and that went into the AXFX3, and that in turn enabled me to split the signal left and right into just to the left, it's over there, so it's there, into one of the boogie cabinets. So I was able to play in stereo, but with just one cabinet, and that's pretty much as much cabinet as you need for the baked potato. But as I kind of started thinking about what I would ultimately do if I really wanted to kind of recreate my favorite sound, because as I kind of play around in here, one of the things about this setup here, there we go. If I get into Universal Audio, the console application, I'm not going to bother sharing the screen, but trust me, I'm muting both the delay and the reverb. All right, so now let's add the verb. Just the delay. Delay and verb. All right, so the thing about the way that's set up is that it is set up in parallel. That is to say, the delays, gotcha, still used to that top knob being volume control. The delays and the reverbs are actually not running one into the other. They're actually kind of happening separately. And the thing that's interesting about that is how most records, when you hear a delay and reverb that's done in the studio after the fact, that's actually how you're actually hearing it. When we have a traditional guitar rig and we have an effects loop, we traditionally will place our delays, then the reverbs. So we kind of hear the delay kind of echoing both the direct signal and the echo signals in turn going into the reverb. And you kind of get this downstream effect of both the ping of the direct signal going into the verb as well as the ping of the delays going into the verb. When you're running those effects in parallel, you will hear the direct signal creating the ping, if you will, into the delay and the ping into the reverb. But what you won't hear is those subsequent delays pinging the reverb because they're now parallel. And I've always been, oh, I love it in series. You know, if you think about kind of the Eric Johnson wash of sound, I've always loved that. But as I was kind of experimenting with putting together a mono rig for the baked potato, I kind of went, nope, not feeling it. Not only did I realize I kind of don't want to play in mono, I also realized, and it was kind of one of those things, and I encourage you to listen to that voice where I don't know what's bugging me, but something's bugging me. And finally, I kind of went, I think that means that I actually have no longer preferred the sound of my delay running into my reverb and actually fall in love with the sound of delays and reverbs running in parallel, which is where something like the AXFX3 becomes incredibly powerful. And so right here, we have another new little member of the family here that this is the FM3. In fact, so new it's still got the plastic on the screen and the tag attached. But I'm really excited to kind of be able to get this guy into the mix of kind of one of these smaller fly rigs. So when I can't take the giant rack, and when we went to Nashville, I took the Mark 525 and the FM9, which was just more effect than I needed for that. Also new that showed up this week is this baby Pog. It is the cutest little thing ever, and I saw that this guy came out. So this is basically their little compressor, and one of the things I'm going to do a video on is what to look for in a compressor. I've got probably 15 or so compressors around here. But one of the things that I really love in a compressor is a tone control. So when I saw Electro-Harmonix release this, I was like, you know what, please send me one. And lucky me, I opened up the box and they're like, there's 2 boxes in there. I'm like, wait a second, what? And I opened it up and was like, baby Pog. So I'm beside myself because in case you don't know, Joe Satriani kind of has the micro Pog on his board. And I'm like, So I'm really excited to check that out. Getting back to the rig at hand, this guy at the Baked Potato, when we played Pianissimo, I was like, oh, I don't have a way to take the tones that I'm loving and get them extra quiet other than the volume control. And then, it just does begin to affect the way you're hitting the front end of the amplifier. And I was like, I know what I wish I had brought with me, but I just didn't quite have time to get this all together because I literally grabbed the Boogie from the Mesa folks on the Wednesday, the Thursday before going down to Los Angeles on the Sunday. So I had not a super huge amount of time to put the rig together. But the point being is this little device is very cool. So as you know, that pedal show has kind of got a small sphere of influence, and I'm being facetious, huge sphere of influence. And Daniel from that show, Dan, is also Dan from the Gig Rig. So this is a box that is here now, and I'll be doing an interview with Dan. So I'm super excited. This is kind of the great thing about this Justin Crew video. It's like I finally get a chance to start producing content for guitar players about gear. That's different than gear demos, which I love doing, but I want to be doing different things. I've done the gear demo thing long enough. That doesn't mean I don't want to spend time playing through particular pieces of gear that I, as an artist, I'm drawn to and enable me to do something. And from that perspective can go like, this is how I use it. This is what I love about it. If you're looking to do something like this is great. That's not kind of like, hey, every guitar player under the sun, I'm going to tell you every feature about what this does, and trying to hey, you want to buy a pedal? That. I'm trying not to do that anymore. But this is going to be a really important part of this rig. I'm going to jump back to the rig in just a second. This is also something that I got off of, in fact, I haven't opened it up yet. This is something back on the string topic. That if you have multiple guitars and you have different gauges of strings on them, and this thing's actually pretty cool. I got this in flipping Amazon. So this is I don't know what the hell you call this thing, caliper or measurer thing, whatever the hell. I don't know. But it enables you to measure the thickness of your strings. And Gary Brower's always had one of these because I'm always like, hey, what strings were on there anyway? And he's like, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, you should really get one of these instead of always kind of not knowing what's on your guitars. So finally, I got one of these so I know what's on the different guitars. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to then kind of, my trusty brother label maker, and I'm like me, if there's a cable that's supposed to be left and right, and this, by the way, it says R for right for the new rig, and now I'm going to have ones that are going to be CL, center left, and CR, center right. But this little label maker for me is kind of like my mad anal retentive self can't resist. By the way, anybody wondering, and you're probably not, am I ever going to get merch up on my website? And the answer is yes. But the thing about the great folks, Stephanie and Eric Riley, they also provided these yo-yos. So the funny thing is, is we sell way more yo-yos than shirts at the shows, and I'm happy about that. So you got to have a yo-yo. So we'll have those up on the website soon. So getting back to the rig, I'm going to have the one head coming out, powering the two middle pairs of speakers in the two cabinets. In turn, I'm going to use the line out going into the fractal, which will then split the signal left and right for delays and reverbs running completely wet in parallel on the outside two pairs. And it is highly probable that I'm also going to integrate the Universal Audio Starlight. Hang on a second. I can do this. Going off frame. I hate doing that, but what the hell? Where is the Starlight and where is the other one? There we go. Starlight and Golden. Coming. Who is it? It's me. I'm back. All right. So these two guys, the Golden is the reverb. So this pedal, if you kind of register it, and this Starlight, the Golden and Starlight, if you register them, lo and behold, you get extra algorithms, and ironically, it's the Cooper Time Cube and the Lexicon 224 reverb, which are my go-to studio Universal Audio plugins. So one of the things that I'm battling with, and just for piss and giggles, those of you that are playing live, or even if you're not playing live, it's kind of like, okay, what are my go-to effects in the studio? My plugins, what's neat is those are my go-to sounds. They're on every demo. Like, as I go to, for example, if you listen to rhythm guitars, besides being slightly out of tune, that's the sound of the Cooper Time Cube delay, dotted eighth quarter note, and then the Lexicon 224 reverb. That's just kind of like, it's just my jam. And, one of the things that I am going to do is, as I get into the fractal audio, is I'm going to go, hey, you know what? I'm going to use the, and this is an old version of this. There we go. No. Where are you? Come here, Wetterbox. Come here, boy. Come on, boy. There we go. So this is the old version of Daniel's wet box, and he now has one called a Wetterbox, gig rig. So it enables you to kind of blend in your parallel signals for delays and reverbs. So I'm going to kind of incorporate that and figure out how I'm going to integrate that around those pedals, and those are also going to run in the Axe Effects. So the Axe Effects is going to control all of that. Down here on the ground is the other addition to the rig, the FC6. I don't need a huge amount of buttons to push, but being able to remotely control all the stuff that's happening back there and have the ability to get some expression and foot switches happening down at my feet is going to solve a bunch of this. And the reason I am talking about this, one, is I'm first of all super excited, but secondly, I'm also hopefully going to enable some other guitar players to solve some of the challenges they're having, because just so many of the people that I hang out with here are using modelers and rigs and trying to figure out how to get their thing to be live. I have fallen in love with tube amps, and my jam is using the Mesa Boogie stuff. The Mark 7 is the best amp I've ever used, and I've used a few, and I absolutely love it. But being able to use it in combination with the Fractal gear, it's just me in hog heaven. All right, let me make sure I'm not just yapping away and missing some important things to reply to. There we go. All right, comments. There we go. Come on, you can do this. All right, Robert Limon, what's going on? Caliper. There we go. Need vinyl. Is it similar to a power sock? So, great question. No, because, and this is so funny. Daniel did this great video where he says, is it, do you use it like, a reactive low box? No, and he keeps going back and saying it. It's a great question. So it is not like a classic attenuator in most instances. Most attenuators have a tendency to sit after the speaker output on your amplifier. And depending on who you're talking to and what technology they're using, Some people are really against using reactive load boxes or attenuators to take everything coming out of the amplifier and then dialing that back. So the thing that I am very comfortable with is I have a very, I will say, a blossoming relationship with the folks at Two Notes. And the Mesa Boogie, the Cab Clone IR, you start looking at kind of inside the components, you're going to see some Two Notes nomenclature on I should say, their name is the Two Notes and Boogie work closely together. Two Notes was involved in the technology that's in the Cab Clone IR. It's also, the great thing about the Mark 7 that is amazing is it's got the Cab Clone IR built in, basically, if you will, in triplicate for the 3 channels. So you can literally dial in one of the 8 amazing, Mesa Boogie created them, IRs, and it's one of the guys that worked with Third Eye Blind, brilliant producer engineer. Or you can load your own IRs. But what's neat is that it's what I love about Cab Clone IR, but it's kind of in triplicate, so you can dial each one in for each one of the channels. So say, for example, you want to use an open back, 112 or 212 for your clean channel, you can do that, and remembers all that on a preset by preset basis. It's just flipping nuts. So the part of the goal of the rig video that I'm hopefully going to get to this next week is going to be like, look, there's so many options out there. Unless you have a strategy, it's really easy to go, I don't flip and know. With what I'm doing, because if you will, it's kind of an artist-centric point of view, I have a very specific application, so I can speak to kind of what I'm doing and why I'm doing, and just kind of go, look, you may not be doing what I'm doing or why I'm doing it, but you will have at least the idea to potentially go, oh, well, I can take this from there, and then it can benefit of how you're going to do what you're going to do and why you're going to do it. What kind of hand lotion is that? This is vitamin D. My mom, or vitamin E rather. My mom, who's no longer with us, used to buy this for me, and it's really good. I hate lotion that sits on my hands and doesn't soak in. Flippin' drives me out of my mind. I don't like bringing it back over to the instrument, and this stuff is great. And as you're kind of dealing with cables and whatnot, at least my hands, the dust has a tendency to dry my hands out in a not good way. Great question. Brad Gillis uses, Robert, great to see you, by the way. Brad Gillis uses Mesa Boogie to brilliant ends. Brad's kind of a buddy. It was actually funny. We have a sushi bar that's here in the town where I live. And, Brad was kind of a couple tables down. He played on my last record. And so I'm like, I text him like, hey, Brad, what's going on? And he kind of turns around, I thought that was you. So it was really funny because I think we were both in our baseball hats. So it was kind of fun. Griffin, calipering. So that is to say, now an attenuator, what it does is it steps down kind of the volume after the amplifier. And the challenge is that it can put a stress on the output transformer, and it can potentially blow up your amplifier. So as the name implies, you're kind of stepping the output down. So my amp guy, vehemently against it. Mason from Vertex, there's a group of us that kind of get together here in the Bay Area for a Friday morning breakfast. And I kind of go once every couple of months. But one of the things Mason is very specific about the gear that he thinks should and shouldn't be used. And one of the things he talks about is kind of these strange transients that will happen as an amplifier and a reactive load box are speaking to each other. The output transformer can kind of send these things, and if the reactive load box doesn't know how to deal with that, it can be problematic for the output transformer. He knows way more about that stuff than I do, other than the fact I've got a really good, rather famous friend who blew up the tubes. I don't know if he blew up the output transformers using a reactive load box, and was not happy. Understandably so. So the point being is with the Mesa Boogie stuff, because the Cab Clone IR is built in there, I know that the folks at Two Notes were very much involved in that. That amp is designed so you don't have to use a speaker cabinet or speaker if you don't want to, which I think is flippin' genius. And there's going to be a bunch of recording that I'm getting ready to do where it's just going to be sitting here, not running into the cabinets. The interesting thing is that that's say I'm going to be using Cab Clone IR. The interesting thing is I go to do the demo, how I'm going to kind of take sound coming off of the wet side of things, and the stupid easy answer of that, because again, as other people are looking to kind of go, well, how do I approach something like this? Because, if you're going to go wet, dry, wet, how do you actually mic up things when you do that? Well, the great thing about the Axe Effects is it enables you to use their Dynacabs. And so I'll just place Dynacabs at the end of the signal chain inside the Axe Effects, and I'll route those to separate outputs that will go straight into Pro Tools. So now I will have the Cab Clone IR coming out of the Mesa Boogie head, and then the Dynacabs coming out of the fractals. I can also use the Cab M pluses that I've got from Two Notes. But there's also something that's coming. The folks at, and I'm super excited because this just kind of happened yesterday. The folks at Mojo Tone make this 212 speaker isolation box that doubles as a cabinet, but you can also, it's basically an ISO cab, and it has things for 2 microphones, but you can also run it as a 212 with their own separate inputs cabinet. So for me, what it enables me to do is put an actual speaker load on an actual amplifier, so I'm not using a reactive load, and then in turn interrupt that. Sir makes these boxes, and basically they're line out boxes for the speaker signals. So coming out of, I don't know, one of the high powered twins, like that one right there. That one right there is a Bonamassa prototype. That one back over there that you can't see is actually one, an actual 59 that used to be owned by Keith Richards, and before and after that Joe Satriani. And I think it lived at Steve I's studio for a while. Great sounding amplifier, but I do not want to use a reactive load box on that. So, but I do want to have the ability to use the Two Notes technology. So what it enables me to do is interrupt the signal on the way from the output of the amplifier to an isolated cabinet, take that and run that into the Cab M Plus. That is to say, I'm going to use the Sir box. And I think the Cab M will enable you to do that as well. In fact, that's actually, I think, how I did it the last time. But the great thing about that is the Cab M Plus, you can then connect that to your computer, and you can choose which virtual speakers and cabinets and microphones you're going to use for their DynRRs going into Pro Tools, which is my current DAW of choice. So it gives you some options. So there will be some diagrams, because if you're like, playing with just kind of a one-channel amplifier, you plug in and you get magic without having to do anything other than that. Some of this stuff is going to be like speaking Greek. So I'm going to diagram some of the stuff out because it's a big help to be able to do that. Two Notes is that, there we go. Corey. So first of all, you can't read that because that's like half a font. Half a point. Corey Fraser, first of all, hello. Two Notes is the S and then 3 asterisks. I wonder what he's getting at. I literally bought a Rev D20 after one of the videos you did during the pandemic. In my opinion, is just as good as the aux, and I have both. No, it is amazing. And so one of the other videos that I'm going to do is on solutions of how to make your modeler loud. And the D20, I actually have a pair of them, as you know from the videos. So it is a great way to be able to kind of take your modelers and use it with an amplifier that you can, or choose not to integrate with it with a cabinet, which is, they're just really brilliantly designed. The Rev folks know a thing or two, as do the Two Notes folks. Really great stuff. Eric, Stevie Ray, Andrew Vaughn. Speaking of reverbs and plugins, can you recommend something to give a room sound when direct recording? Yeah, the interesting thing is, morning, Rick, how you doing? Hold on a second. Hello, legend. Dude, if you guys haven't checked out Rick's new band, correct me if I'm, it's Dihumane, right? Flippin' A. The guitar tones and the whole thing are just nuts. Just so good. And needless to say, the guitar playing, but I was like, flippin' A, the production. So I remember listening to whatever it was, the first single that came out. But Rick and I had a little exchange the other night, and I kind of went over to YouTube and listened to a bunch of this stuff, and I'm like, damn, this sounds great. So there you have it. Founding father of so many things, of the thrash and beyond. So, Eric, getting back to your comment about what to use, one of the things that I am finding myself, and this kind of, it's an interesting thing how what I do going into that, that's just strange. I've got this one camera on the crotch shot. Let's fix that. Weird. Is how to then kind of go, okay, where is the most logical place going into your DAW to have reverb? And so for me, it's actually inside the DAW. So the amp that I'm running to is just it's the craziest little thing. It's a Line 6 Catalyst that I just love this amp. And it's actually got great effects on it, but I prefer the Universal Audio stuff. So, and in the process kind of falling in love with the sound of the Cooper Time Cube delay, which I've loved for a long time. Probably 10 years I've been using that plugin. And then kind of going, well, what reverb am I going to dial up? And then kind of stumbling across the Lexicon 224 and just going, I love this. What's happening is the things that I'm doing inside my DAW I want to do in the rig. And I'll be able to imitate the sounds of those in the fractal, but rather than doing that, because I've kind of, again, this is kind of the whole thing about having a process that sometimes you don't have your process yet as you're kind of figuring it out. And there are these little conversations that gnaw at the back of your brain. You're kind of going, and you're trying to work out some how does the cage allow you to represent the 7 diatonic numbers? 7 divided by 5? No, not seeing it. I digress. You're trying to figure out some application for something that you haven't quite wrapped your head around how you're going to use it. And so the idea of going, well, wait a second, why did I use the fractal stuff to do what the Cooper Time Cube and the 224 don't do? Dumbass. I'm just like, oh, right. So I can have all of that, and rather than just kind of go, well, I'm sure I could sit there and spend a couple of hours attempting to replicate the EQ. Hey, Aaron, what's going on, my man? The EQ curve of that's unique to each of the delays out there, and how the repeats kind of decay and disappear into nothingness. Why don't I actually just find my favorite delays and reverbs inside the Axe Effects and just live there, and have the benefit of being able to use my favorite stuff from Universal Audio World? I'm just like, duh. Okay. All right. First of all, Aaron, I have some other questions that came in here. Mahalo, my friend. Once again, my pleasure to share the wealth of knowledge because we all get better as we kind of think about this together, kind of a group thought. I'm curious, in this new rig, are you going to play? You mentioned the Boogie is stereo. Your first question, how many cabs in total? 2 stereo cabs with the outside cab designated wet specific. Your dry signal is coming up the throat per the inside speakers. Or is it 4 cabs reflecting essentially the same configuration, only more speaker? Great question. And that's one of the reasons why I'm going to do a diagram. So that where all of this started, and again, the idea is to try and not make it into some stupid diatribe, but actually kind of go, I think most of us are faced with very similar challenges, which are like, at a certain point you kind of go, once I'm inside my DAW, I have the benefit of stereo effects. And once you start playing with stereo effects, you kind of go, I don't really want to go back. Joe Satriani, only in mono, and it works for him really well. He had an experience, he played A Day on the Green, and in that mix, the simulcast, or what went out on TV, they summed the 2 outputs of his CE1, which split a Boss CE1 stereo, of course, split the signal left and right to the 2 different Marshalls he was using, and they summed them to mono, and it sounded like Le Poupou. And Le Poupou is not the desired result that we're going for, needless to say, unless we're looking for the poop sound. So he kind of went, never again. Literally, I remember just vehemently, he was like, okay, lesson learned. And since then, he plays in mono, and it just sounds amazing because he understands how to make his thing happen. He plays through multiple amps, but his signal is a mono signal. And I don't believe that's changed throughout all the years. Now, one of the things that he would do is he would run, when he was using the time machines, he would run one delay into the other. And so he would get this ping pong, not a ping pong, but a multi-tap delay in series, so it enabled you to kind of get the effect of one of the things you love about a stereo delay, where you kind of have this feeling, and it's not set up that way, but the fractal stuff is really good about that. So you can actually kind of cross-feed the feedback from the left delay into the right delay and the right delay into the left delay. The thing about the tweakability inside the fractal is just amazing. And so, why not just kind of go in and tweak my favorite sounds in there and then do the stuff that I can only do in there, and the stuff that I love about the Cooper Time Cube and the T24, just bring it into that as well. Done. The idea was, initially I had the two 412 cabinets. This was the Neely Brosh gig. And I was trying to use just the modeler, and I was using the Celestion full range live response speakers into two 412 cabinets. And at that point, I was kind of experimenting with different amp models, and I just couldn't get it to sound great loud. It's no fault of the fractals. I just didn't quite know what lead sound I was going for, or which amp I was going to use. And so I was using kind of a Fender Tweed thing with some drive pedals in the front, and it sounded great. But once I turned it up, it wasn't quite what I wanted. So I have this thing that'll happen. I'll either put myself to bed if it's starting to get late and just kind of go, okay, I just need to sleep on this. Or in those situations, it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon before I had to drive down to Los Angeles the next day. And sucking, opening for Neely Brosh is not an option, if at all avoidable. So I kind of will just take myself to the showers and go, all right, you need a shower, you just need to think about it. And I kind of went, I'm going to storage, I'm going to get my two Boogie cabinets, I'm going to get the JP2C, and I'm going to split the signal. I'm going to use the fractal audio to do that. I'm going to grab the power amp. I'm going to use the reactive load box coming out of the Boogie. I'm going to go into the fractal. That's how I'm going to get that in stereo, and I'm going to run that into two cabinets. Done. And I wired it up in about a half an hour. I was like, why didn't I think about this 5 hours and a lot less frustration to go? So then I kind of went, okay. So then the idea is like, well, okay, because the math is, how do you get one head and a stereo signal? And that's where the Power Stage 700 becomes so valuable. 350 watts per side. If that doesn't get the job done, you have other problems. So then that enables me to kind of take that. But I was like, well, okay, what dry wet? Do I have to bring a third cabinet? I was like, well, wait a second. When I shrink things down and I use one cabinet, which is what I did for the Nashville's kind of little set of shows, was I took a Mark 525, literally put it in an overhead bag, little kind of roller bag, and brought it on the plane with me, and flew with that head. And then in the Helix backpack, don't tell my friends at Line 6, I had the FM9 and the Cab Clone IR, because the Cab Clone that's in the back of the Mark 525 is an earlier version. And I'm not super crazy about the IR that's in there, and you can't change it out like you can on the Mark 7. So I brought the Cab Clone IR, head, Cab Clone IR into the FM9, splitting it left and right into the power amp, which also got stowed in the little Helix backpack. And then in turn, that was going out into the 412 stereo cabinet the good folks at Boogie were able to provide for me for that little series of shows. And I was like, wow, this works really well. So now I've just been basically riffing on that theme on how to do that. And I kind of, well, wait a second. If they're stereo cabs, and I'm really liking this kind of parallel versus series thing with the delays and reverbs, I can build a wet dry wet rig, two 412 cabinets, boom, and splitting the center two pairs of vertical speakers. Those will be the dry, coming out of the Mark 7, going in, then kind of running out of the line out of the Mark 7, going to the Axe Effects, stereo out, into the outside pairs of speakers. Wet, dry, wet. Where the dry is basically a 412 cabinet shared between shared between the internal pairs, top and bottom, of the two 412 cabinets. And so I'm really excited to wire that up. I know it's going to be insane. Because at this point I've been messing with this enough. I'm kind of like, okay, I know what's going to work before I do it. And strategically, that enables, us to have a really great approach, because, if you look at a 1960A or 1960B Marshall cabinet, stereo cabinets. So the best-selling cabinets, or in my opinion, just plain the best cabinets on the market, are stereo. So it means that option is there. There we go, dude. There we go. Come on. Right? So, sorry, for those of you that are on your phones, that's Rick. I love my Power Stage 700 so much. Stereo with my quad, best fly rig ever, totally. And like I said, if that doesn't get the job done, there are other issues. Okay, Cali Fortune. I've been playing with my carving guitars, stereo output wiring. I love that each of the two pickups gets its own output, interesting possibilities with reamping. No, that sounds great. Love that. All right, Aaron, you had a second question. Certainly you will attain some degrees of separation, thus giving you the latitude to create a whole sound of interesting dimension there. Are you going to EQ the left and right versus the wet cabs differently, blah, 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 like we do with vocals, sometimes the instruments? Okay. So the interesting, the short version is initially not. And so that was what was really interesting about that, the series of shows starting in Nashville. At first, I was really hesitant, like, well, what happens when I run stereo inside one cabinet? And Eric Johnson, by the way, has been doing this for a long time, and I kind of went, sounds great. I have absolutely zero doubt that when I put the dry in the center of the two cabinets and the wet on the on the outside, that it's going to sound amazing. What's even neat about it is you're really kind of, because I like to stand right smack in the center of the two cabs, so you're going to get that headphone. I flippin' hate wearing headphones. I hate wearing in-ear monitors. I will do anything to not stick anything on my ears or in them other than a Q-tip, and you're not even supposed to do that, but different conversation. So you got just the meatiness of the direct sounds. With that, here's the other thing that I've discovered. So I generally do not like the sound of my delays and my reverbs running in the effects loop. Why? Because you want your power amp section to sag a little bit, so it's kind of giving up enough of the ghost where part of the sound is the power amp kind of going, you're pummeling me. It's actually one of the reasons I'm really excited to actually run speakers directly off the Mark 7. That said, what I love most about all of this is it enables me to run, again, kind of like what I'm already doing in Pro Tools. So I'm kind of taking a blended approach of what I do in the box here, where I'm like, hey, I'm running my delays and reverbs in parallel, just like you would do in the studio on aux buses. And in turn, it enables me to just have just my direct signal, if you will, the dry amp signal as I would want to have that. So I could, if I chose to, apply delay EQ to those different things. But to answer your question explicitly, inside each of the delay and reverb blocks inside the Axe effects, there is EQ, and I always take some of the bottom off of my delays. And I almost always take some of the top off my delays. And I almost always take some of the bottom off the reverbs. And I almost always take some of the top off my delays, off the top of the reverb. So I am already EQing those always. And the neat thing is that on the delays, there's a thing called diffusion. So you can basically make the delays function like a reverb as you get the repeats. And on the reverbs, you can use the pre-delay to create the delay. But then you can also add feedback to that. So you can literally add delay inside your reverbs, and you can add reverb inside your delay. What you can't do is change the, if you will, quote unquote, the secondary algorithm. That's to say, if I'm a delay, and then I add I said it a minute ago, and it's completely gone. But basically, the reverb component, you can't change the algorithm that's creating the reverb sound. And the same thing is true is when you're inside the reverb side of things, and you go to add the pre-delay, and then you add your repeats. You're not able to, or the feedback, I think is what they'll refer to it as, inside the reverb block. You're not able to choose the algorithm for the delay that's kind of driving that part of it. It's basically part of the reverb, and on the delay side, the delay side. So you can't change the secondary algorithm. But, it's still incredibly great to be able to kind of have one thing that's doing that. And say, you're going to be using amp models. Sorry, I'm pointing to the FM3. One of the things that's going to happen very soon is I'm going to start capturing through the cab tone match inside this, where basically all my favorite amps, I'm going to capture them such that if I do have to do a fly date, I've got all my favorite amps tone match such that if I just have to show up someplace with the FM3, I can do that, but I quote unquote have my amps with me. Now generally speaking, if I can kind of fly with the Mark 525, I'll do that. But at this point, I'm really getting hooked on the Mark 7 channel inside the Mark 7 because it's just kind of, as I've got it dialed up, it, you there, you there, you there. Enables me to get this kind of sweet sound that's got some gain to it, but at the same time, if you want to get Becky, it's not so distorted that you lose the ability to kind of dial things back. And this is kind of one of the things that has really become a big part of how I'm using my guitars these days, is that I am blending in the neck pickup. And on the other Flying V Black Betty, what's really interesting is that even when I'm just in the bridge position, the volume control for the neck pickup influences, it's kind of like a master volume. So as I bring it down, it pulls a little bit of the top end off, or it pulls as much of the top end off as I want to dial. And then in turn, although this is the volume control for the bridge pickup here, on that guitar, it's the tone control. So I'm finding that guy at about 7 on the bridge pickup, I'm able to kind of get that spot that I really love. And it's been a very interesting journey of how I'm using the gear to elicit a relatively wide range of tones. So there were a couple of other questions that managed to come in. So let me see if I can make my way over there. There we go. Okay, Mike Delecki. And this is a great one. So this is one of the neat things about the interview with Justin Kirk that, again, is up on YouTube now. I wonder how many... Sorry, I'm just kind of curious how it's doing. How you doing over here? Come on. Whatever reason, my browser is just not wanting to refresh this window. It's probably going... That's because you're doing a live stream, you moron. There we go. 1.9 thousand views. I'm very happy about that. Spent a lot of time and energy working on that. Okay. So the question is, and it relates to this question, which is why I went over there. For Axe FX3, how do you recommend setting up patches to allow you to switch between guitars with pickups that have different output while keeping the same relative gain and tone? For example, a Strat with single coils, a Les Paul with humbuckers, and another guitar with actives like EMG 8185. First of all, it's a great question. It's kind of the $1 million question that most of us have. If we're choosing to switch guitars, my whole thing is I'm basically trying to use one guitar. When I bought Black Betty with her broken string, hang on, come on over here, Black Betty. I broke a string, I think just before I went to dinner last night. Or no, in the afternoon yesterday. There's Black Betty. With the broken string that broke up here, so I'm like, I couldn't let any out from the headstock. But basically, even these two guitars are relatively alike. Actually pretty radically different. But in fact, you can see the new one is much thicker than the old one. And it's a very different sounding guitar. The kind of top mount Floyd, certainly it has a lot to do with that. The funny thing is, one of the reasons that I stopped playing this guitar here is I discovered I really don't like playing an unbound neck. It was like really like the feel of binding. And it's one of those things that you don't really think about until you're kind of going, what am I not liking the feel of? I'm like, oh, I actually am missing the binding that's on the other guitars there, my standards and whatnot. because all my go-to Les Pauls have bound necks, and I was like, oh, I get it. I don't like that feeling. So now I'm just kind of getting over it. And just yesterday, kind of when I picked up this guitar, I'm like, okay, I'm going to choose to fall in love with everything that makes this guitar different. That said, the two guitars, the other Flying V that I bought to be a hot swappable backup as I get to go kind of start touring again, or touring light, is you need to have one guitar and a hot swappable backup, ideally such that if one goes down, you've got another one ready to go, especially when you don't have a tech. That said, if you were in a position where you want to have different guitars, and this is where I want to point you to that YouTube video, youtube.com/Doug Doppler Music. So Justin Crew, Kirk Hammett's tech, is talking about the different things, very specifically of using a Strat, and working with the Axe Effects, where they tried to make the Strat sound like a humbucker, and they were like, well, we're actually doing the opposite of what we wanted to do. The other thing is that they have the packs set, so the active pickups and wireless packs are set 2 dB quieter, such that they are compensating for the volume difference between the two. But in terms of trying to change the sound of the instruments, the whole reason that they're using the different instruments is to kind of keep the different levels of gain and different ways that, the transient attack of... That is, say, that first moment you hit that note. And also then kind of how it begins to bloom. Up and down the neck. And so what's going to happen for me is, as I begin to kind of go, at some point I will have, hopefully, a guitar tech who will actually tune the different guitars, and I may reach for a different thing on different songs. To answer your question, the whole point of this guitar right here and I'm not doing a great job of answering your question, but I will say for me was to have one guitar that rules them all. At some point, I would love to have the ability to play a couple of other guitars and pull them out, because they do sound different. Hang on a second, I'll be back just 1 sec. Let's see if I can do this without breaking anything. Rolling stuff, hopefully not breaking stuff. Almost there, almost there, almost there, almost there, almost there. I'm gonna go for this. There we go. And I'm gonna go for this, and all right. There we go. So the whole thing about being able to go for different guitars. All right, let me not be a total moron. Hang on, let me mute the input there. Oh gosh, seriously? Is that they do something that the others don't. And this is kind of one of the things that I'm really excited to kind of also make some other content about. Imagine that G string's flat. That double tracked with That right there, by the way, is not my favorite sound, but double tracked with. The two of those together, and that with the gold top, just in the bridge position, but the four of those blended together sound great together. And so the different guitars, especially for rhythm guitars, when you do want to use different things, and at some point it would be really nice to be able to pull out the different guitars to get in a live setting, to be able to get them, because the different sounds. So to answer your question, per the video, they're using the wireless body packs to bring things down 2 dB for the active pickups. Yours was not, Mike, the only question where somebody was asking basically the same thing. So I was going, okay, so I did the Guitar Hero thing for 17. And it was funny because I had an NDA with the Guitar Hero folks, so I couldn't talk with anybody outside of that about what I was working on. It was very, very secretive. For at that point, it was there was a lot of money involved, and you were never supposed to leak any of the information. It was just like that was a great way to lose the gig, and I certainly wasn't going to lose the opportunity to do something really unique. So I had to find out what pickups Reb Beach was using without it out. So I called my guy at Ibanez, and I kind of was like, well, I'm working on a thing, but I can't say what thing I'm working on. And we kind of had to get there. And I had to say, can you tell me what Reb was using on 17? And then I put those in one of my Ibanez's, and it still got it. So I'm going to use that guitar as I kind of go to do the EMG thing, kind of go, okay, well, let's see what's going on here. So that will enable me to kind of go, okay, well, where am I going to bring the levels down, and how am I going to do that? So chances are I'll do that on the input in the fractal. But again, this is one of the things where the interview with Justin, he's talking about having done all this stuff on a scale that they kind of do things big. And the idea of kind of what they found worked in a mission critical environment, what they found didn't work. When they were trying to make and one of the things was talking about the fractals where, I think Justin said something that's like, make it have the dog woof or something, where, when you play a cabinet, it goes, and so they spent a bunch of time trying to get the fractal, actually not trying to get the fractals to do it, very specifically recreating that thing, where you kind of get that rumble of the cabinet. And James came and was like, oh man, it's got that thing that I don't like. And they kind of looked at each other and went, that would be Chad and Justin, and kind of went, we just recreated that, we can take that out. So the great thing about the fractal universe is you can have all this crazy control. Again, it's kind of like the delays and reverbs. You can do stuff in the fractal that you can't do anywhere else. It's nuts. Per the different guitars, I totally feel you. There are times you want to pick up the different instruments and have them work. Because my mindset is so Gibson as a Gibson artist now, I'm very conscious of, like, in all honesty, I'm like, you will see very little unless I'm doing something that really is about, like, hey, I'm going to play my super reverb in a like, I'm going to do a series of videos on some of the amps that are here. And there's a brilliant blackface super reverb that's actually Gary Brower's super reverb that lives at a store that a couple of people are pissed that I've taken possession on loan of this amplifier because they really like having it there when they go to test guitars that Gary's worked on. It's one of the best sounding super reverbs I've ever heard. It's just whatever makes a super reverb perfect, this amp has. And people aren't going to want to see me playing a Les Paul. Ooh, I didn't do a great job of color matching those, did I? Well, and so the point being is that there are some strats that are here that, and some tellies that need to be used. So to your point, Mike, is the ability to kind of go in and take a look at that. Oh, look at this, Adrian. Hang on a second. I lost my place in here. Yes, binding. Thank you. Melissa, thanks for calling me out. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Adrian, what's going on, my dear friend? I was mentioning you yesterday. There's a little email thread between a certain manufacturer that you and I know about that's getting ready to send me some new pedals. So Adrian Tackman, a dear friend. Here we go. Love that photo, by the way. I bought his collection of an insane collection of Maestro memorabilia, and he very kindly gifted me a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful boomerang wah. So if you go over to the Maestro electronics.com or maestro-electronics, in any case, it's the website for Maestro. And you kind of go into the history, and then you kind of click a tab, the timeline. There are YouTube videos of the actual flexi discs for the FZ1A, which is, to the best of my knowledge, is the first Stompbox demo ever. And also then for I think the EP1. In any case, those used to belong. Those discs used to belong to Adrian, and I kind of got in touch with him after seeing those videos pop up, and I now own that collection, including those flexi discs. And those are, for gear fanatics like myself, are a big deal. So Adrian was talking about you yesterday, actually, by name, with my friends over at in Gibson World, who now owns, of course, the Maestro brand. Eric, what is the advantage of double tracking, and why would somebody want to do that? That's such a great question. You know, the thing that I love about you, Eric, so Eric is one of my students. There we go. I'd say that's 3-point font for most of the world. And hello, Christopher Colombo. Good to see you, CC. It's a great question. One of the things, Adrian, thank you so much. I am so excited because I actually, I don't know if I was a Gibson artist when you came visiting here. I am now, and I'm also a Mesa Boogie artist. And I guess I'm about to be a Maestro artist as well, which is kind of cool. In any case, what I love about working with Eric is that he is so enthusiastic about guitar, and asks these really, in many ways, how do I say this with the affection that I have for it? I don't know, let's just say I choose to use the phrase good, bad, or in between, intermediate focused questions that are always great questions. They're the best. Like, I got to remember that, because Eric, you always ask about the best things with the, like, I want to know more, this must be important, tell me why it's important. I just love that. So that's a great question. It's like, why would you want to double track? So you're going to hear the nakedness of, and the out-of-tunedness of me playing these parts. Because sometimes when I'm just working on something, can you guitar rushy for me? Man, I don't know what that means, but I'm sure it's cool. Rick Costa, what's going on, my man? Good morning. Great to see your smiling face. Good morning, 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 morning. Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right, let me pull up so this track. So this is quite often what I will do. I wonder if I can. No, I'm not going to take any chances. Let me see if Pro Tools I've got set up has a window that I've already got I can go to. Is there anything? Did I already create my DAW window? Fractal. Computers, interfaces. No, I don't have a Pro Tools DAW window. I tell you what, let's see if I can do this. I hope I don't regret doing this. Oh my word, what the hell is that? All right, hang on. There we go. All right, so this, I don't know what this is, but the hilarious thing is, like, I have no idea what that is or where it came from, but it's like a screen grab. The Cali tweet is here. I don't know what the hell that is. Oh, I know what that was. That's me jamming. I know what that is. All right, in any case, getting rid of that. This right here is the window in Pro Tools. It's small, but it's still Pro Tools. So you'll be able to see me. Let's get rid of this guy right here. So here is just the one guitar on its own, soloed with no delay and reverb. And it will be out of tune, so my apologies. All right, now here's tools. Uh-oh. There we go. All right, here's the other guitar pan to the right. Delay and reverb. And you'll hear the way they just kind of complement each other, even though they are out of tune. Now, the whole thing about that is when I play, my guitar, the direct signal's right up the center. So now I've got the stuff that's on the left and the right. And delay and reverb on the rhythms. And drum. Muting the drums. Lest I get carried away. But that right there, hang on, baby, come back. There we go. That separation of the left and the right allows whatever's in the center to really live in the center instead of kind of everything crowded and, like on the freeway in LA. And it also enables me to, especially with the stereo delays and reverbs, to really kind of feel like I'm playing with other musicians in more of an ensemble thing than just like, hey, there's this one guitar there. Am I just going to put the one over on the left-hand side? It's an interesting thing that I haven't quite figured out in my own thing of, and I'm getting better at it. Like, I'm so used to double tracking guitars that when I hear one guitar kind of, I sometimes don't quite know where to put it. And I will find there's one other thing I will share with y'all, and I need to go in about 1 minute because I got a lesson to teach. That I'm conscious of, for whatever reason, if something's on my left side versus my right side, I notice it more. And I think it has to do with kind of the way we learn to read, kind of in Western civilization, we kind of go from left to right. And so if I want something to be noticed, or for me to notice it more, I'm going to put it on the left. If I want me to have it a little bit more in the background, I'll put it off there on the right. And it's just kind of something that I just kind of instinctively do. I'd be very curious to see if other people have that same reaction. I don't know. In any case, can I play a song for you? Oh, cool. So that right there is a new song, and I actually really, it's one of the reasons I opted to play that. That's a new song. Eric, thank you. No, great question. And Tony, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Happy birthday to you, young man. Let's wish Tony a happy birthday as well. It was just his birthday. Steve Vai wished him a happy birthday as well. Just saying. But that song is called Linger, and so on Monday, in theory, I'm going to be writing the rest of that song with my dear buddy Caleb Johnson, and that's going to be one of the new songs that's going to add it to the vocal album. So I really wanted to be able to share that with you guys, because you actually heard it before Caleb did, and just the Saturday morning thing is so important to me. It's just it's about as social as I get, which sounds really strange and slightly. Well, that's just how things are these days, right? It's me hanging out with a bunch of my buddies. We just do it virtually. But yet it's an incredibly satisfying, rewarding experience for me. And you hear me probably rant on about this, but, I get a chance to see Rick and SNP, Sniped. Oh, stupid me. There we go, Sniped, got it. And Eric and Tony and Chris and whoever is still here hanging out. Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate it. Adrian and Callie for tune and MMMM. In any case, all right, I got to get ready for this lesson. Just thanks again. Been just awesome as always. Eric, again, thank you. You always have the best questions, because it just reminds me some of the things that are, they're just part of my process that are so important. And so you always touch on the things that you don't just ask about stuff. It's stuff that's really important to me. But sometimes it's so important I don't actually verbalize how important it is. You always manage to bring it to the surface. So I really love that. Ron, thank you so much. I look forward to it too. And look at that smile right there. All right. Spencer, what's going on? Thank you, my man. Always a pleasure. My peeps, my favorite peeps. All right. Thank you. First of all, thank you. Really appreciate it. I love that photo there, by the way. Looking very sharp. Paul Richard, thank you so much. Look at this. Look, all my Saturday buddies. This is great. So it's fun. It's and I'm going to try and step up my game in terms of kind of such that although I have a tendency. Oh, awesome, Braden. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Excellent. Really appreciate it. But, the neat thing is that there's going to be so much, like, I'm kind of hitting the gas around a bunch of things here, so to speak. But the neat thing is to be able to kind of share what I'm learning. And so there's going to be a lot more kind of YouTube content. And again, my invitation is please watch the video that I did with Justin Crew. It's at youtube.com/@Doug Doppler Music. They've really kind of made it strange. But in any case, have a great day. Thanks so much, and I will see you next Saturday. Make it a great one. Enjoy. Really appreciate it.